Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Godcast. This is our October Godcast for 2025, and we are very excited and honored for the gentleman that is with us tonight. I'm excited we have Alfonso, who is my amazing co-host, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest here in just a moment, but we do always start with a prayer over our Godcast. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with that. So, Heavenly Father, I want to thank you first for your sovereignty over our lives, your love, your care, and your guidance. I thank you for blessing us with wisdom, knowledge, discernment as we walk your path forward. Tonight, I give extra thanks for clear skies, clean air and water and land to grow the sustenance you provide for us. Thank you for bringing David to us to learn more about your land, your provision, and greater knowledge of healthy foods and farming. We ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Well, I'm very excited. We are honored to have David Stelzer, the founder and CEO of AZure Standard. So, welcome, David.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We are excited. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm going to give a little bit of David's background before we jump in. So, David is a pioneer in regenerative agriculture, a food system reformer, and a visionary thought leader. David is a nationally recognized thought leader and change maker in regenerative agriculture, food freedom, and values based business. As the founder and CEO of AZure Standard, he has spent over 40 years challenging the status quo of industrial food systems, building a movement that prioritizes health, sustainability, and personal liberty through access to clean, nutrient dense food. David was born and raised on a multi generational farm in the Pacific Northwest and saw firsthand the decline of American agriculture from soil degradation to the loss of food sovereignty. He chose the bold and unconventional path, returning the family farm to traditional farming principles rooted in stewardship, integrity, and holistic health. That decision became the seed for AZure Standard, now one of the largest independent distributors of organic and non-GMO foods in the United States, serving hundreds of thousands of customers nationwide. That what you've done, David, is just amazing. Just we're looking forward to being able to dig into this and what you've accomplished. It's amazing. It's amazing. Um, Thank you for what you've done and how you're helping people literally across the country. Um,
Well,
I'm
thanks.
gonna I'm gonna just jump in with the first question. And can you tell us how you see abundant health, clean, organic food, everything else? What does that mean, and how does that come forth through AZure Standard?
Well, health in my experience is a combination of food, which is our biggest one. How do we fuel our body? And that I also would include supplementation as needed and herbal medicine and all that kind of in the food category. Then we also have the spiritual well-being, um, I, emotional, spiritual health. That plays into our body's health in a really big way from my experience. And then we also have basic lifestyle health. Do we exercise? Do we get clean air and fresh water and those kinds of things? Those are our lifestyle choices. All three of those things, and those are all three big and overarching. All three of those play together to create optimum health. When we talk about optimum health, in my experience, you know, maybe there is, it's hard to say exactly what perfect health is, but I do know that the closer that we eat and we live a healthy lifestyle with a proper emotional and spiritual state in our minds, the more health that we see. And health is not just the absence of disease. Health is like vibrancy. It's innovation. It's having a purpose bigger than ourselves. It's having something that we're grasping on to and making happen in this world. A healthy, there was an old saying that, a man that has good health can have 1,000 goals. A man who does not have his health typically only has one goal. And
Mm.
health is that vibrancy that we can do all that. And I have and I've experienced in my lifetime both sides of that, and that's why it's such a passion to me. I was that super sickly kid. Um, I was not expected to live. It was everything, was supposedly not good. And my parents actually got started down the path of healthy food, um, a long, long time ago when I was fairly young, and eventually got into organic agriculture as well. So both of those sides came from my parents. I did not pioneer that part. Um, I'm the one that started taking our products and other farmers' products and getting it to other folks, i.e., Azure Standard was born. Um, but I've experienced that. Then when you know, we and my wife also did not grow up in a super strong position of health. She's had
Wow.
things that she struggled with. And yet, especially as childhood, I mean, she went, her parents, the doctor route, and they did terrible stuff that, should have been easy things to deal with. And, they like to cut and do all those things much quicker than should happen. But as we raised our children in this next generation, and we started from the very beginning of our marriage eating a very, very clean diet. And I'm talking clean, not just things that we can't, we don't eat any food that we can't pronounce the name of, but we also
Yeah.
make sure that there's no extra or chemicals on that food that we might not be able to pronounce the name of.
Yeah.
So clean in the sense of regenerative organic agriculture, and also clean in the sense of not highly processed. Both sides of that to me are very, very important. But we raised 11 children.
Wow.
We didn't, we, and they grew up in vibrant health. We only ended up in all the time that the 11 children were in our household, including their births. There were no doctors or hospitals involved other than one broken femur. That's the only
Love it.
time, that there was any um, conventional doctor of any sort. I mean, we did have a couple like chiropractor type visits, but for injuries, but there was never any conventional doctors or hospitals except for that one situation. And
That's
then the
really good.
so
That would be the goal. I mean,
it
for most
it
people, that would be the goal.
it works. I'm 100% convinced that it works because I've
Mm.
seen it in my own life. We both, they didn't inherit good health or good genetics because we were both sickly. Neither one of us grew up with that kind of vibrant health. And, in taking it even further, it was, they were always full of danger and mischief and, all kinds of, when you live in the country, it's fine. They can go climb the highest trees and, scale cliffs and all that stuff that healthy kids do. And, but yet in a couple of the younger boys actually even um, got into sports and mostly long distance running. And um, two of them actually did it in college on scholarships because And there's no it wasn't from genetics. It was an unfair advantage they had from having a healthy diet and lifestyle. They had an unfair advantage against. They didn't, they don't have the genetics for that.
Yeah.
That's not the situation here, and that's probably why they didn't make it to the Olympics. But but they came close. My one of my sons missed the Olympic tryouts by like 11 seconds in the steeplechase. So
Wow.
it wasn't that they were not close; they were right
Wow.
there. But this is not this that only happened because of that healthy lifestyle, especially as children. I can't stress enough
Yeah.
how important it is to be purist with your children as they're growing up if you really want that kind of vibrant health. Sorry, maybe that was too big a soapbox,
No,
but
no, it's great. And just, as you're talking about with your kids and how pure they did grow up and what a difference it made in their health. Number one, you didn't have to go to the doctors except for a broken bone. One
Mhm.
almost makes it to the Olympics. I mean, that just shows how important the healthy eating is, how important eating directly from the earth, the organic piece. And the goal really is to be free of the system and have people actually live in total health, which is what you've done with your kids. And you're right, it's not the genetics, it's the environment.
it's the environment and the choices that we make each day. And and those choices have to be made every day.
Yeah.
It's not one big choice. Oh, I'm going to be doing this now. You have to make it every day. Every time you
Mhm.
sit down at a meal, every time that you decide where you're going to eat, every time, that you're that we have to take our thoughts captive. Those are all,
Yeah.
it's those daily decisions that really turn the needle or,
No, that's true. Alfonso, you would piggyback on that one?
Yes. That's my answer. Yes.
Yes.
All that is true.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that kind of gets into the next question on so what is Azure's food philosophy?
um, we want to, and Azure's food philosophy in the practical sense is still, um, it's still changing slightly, but it's changing, getting cleaner. I have,
Love it.
from the very beginning of Azure, we have had standards for the food that Azure carries. Um, the standards are, you know, pretty much no synthetics of any sort in the
Mhm,
food,
mhm,
no excitotoxins, no um, colorings, dyes, artificial anything, and no genetically modified anything. Those have kind of been in really huge big strokes. And we actually have on our website, if you want to go see our big strokes thing, we've been getting a little stricter yet on the things that we've put our label on over the past few years. We've been, very careful that there's, no refined sugars, for
mhm.
instance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We quit doing refined sugar. We do some organic refined sugar still, but conventional refined sugar is out. The high fructose stuff, those kinds of things. Initially, those are standards that were increasing over the years. They haven't been exactly in place since the beginning, and we've had to transition products away from those. And we've discontinued a bunch of products just even recently. We are now transitioning more away from, even if there are other options, if there are organic options, we're even transitioning away from all of the conventional. We don't have a lot, but we do have some things on the conventional side. And unless we can certify them like glyphosate free or something like that, we're transitioning out of all of those right now. Hopefully within the next 6 months, you'll see none of that at Azure at all.
Wow.
just because I feel better about it when, because I can't guarantee unequivocally that they're not going to get a little glyphosate in their beans if they're eating a conventional bean. And if I can get an organic bean of that, if I can get an organic lima bean instead of the conventional one I have been selling, and I can't guarantee that there's not trace glyphosate in the conventional
Mm.
without extensive testing, I'm just going to quit selling it. And that's exactly what we're
Love
doing.
it.
And so we're working on that and actually making sure that we get, higher quality. So that's the next goal. So it is still, you know, it's a never ending process maybe to keep that going from to a higher and higher place. Azure is not about it's not about what I call I'm loosely going to call fad diets. We can support
Mm. Mm-hmm.
diets if you want to be a vegetarian or you want to be a carnivore, which are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. um, we can get you the cleanest possible food in that space for either one of those diet types. And I'm not saying there's not a place for some of those diets. There could be for some people, especially for short periods of time. Um, and there's 1,000 other diets in between that are like fad diets, so to speak. And there's also fad products and fad bad products. Um, right now, we are unfortunately getting a lot of that going on right now. I believe that the the large pharmaceutical firms, a few years ago, they were getting the social media and stuff to censor alternative medicine type stuff. They lost that fight. So what they've done is they have gone out there into that same social media thing. They have these doctor figureheads, usually doctor figureheads
Yeah.
in that place, and they go out and they spend millions of dollars on advertising on places like YouTube and Google Ads and things like that, promoting these doctors that absolutely spread nothing but confusion.
Yeah.
They embrace a little bit of well-known alternative medicine, a little bit of healthy food lifestyle, and then they spew absolute lies. And um, and pretty soon people go, well, that doctor said this is bad. I mean, one example of that, there's a couple of them that just came to my desk this, very, very recently. Apparently there's one of those big name doctors that spends gazillion dollars out there, and he was saying, oh, the 5 foods you should never eat, um, because they, especially for men or something like that. And so one of them's, the first one's something obvious. Oh, you shouldn't eat, yellow number 11. That's kind of bad. Well, I agree with that. That's no
Right.
brainer. Yellow number 11, nobody should eat, let alone men, And then they get a couple things, and you shouldn't eat almonds. Almonds? Come on. Why would you pick on a food that not only have we been eating as a people for at least 3 or 4 thousand years? Almonds are mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
They're mentioned, um, plus almonds are one of the only foods in the modern American diet that has Laetrile B17 in them. And so you kind of wonder, is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Is there a purpose? Because most people, I mean, there's a bunch of other things that have B17 that some of us eat, like apricot pits and millet and buckwheat. But how many people in the modern American diet eat those things? But most
Right.
people do eat almonds.
Yeah.
And almonds have not as high as apricot pits, but a fair amount of vitamin B17, maybe enough to prevent a lot of, you know, simple cancers. And
Right.
yet now they're going to come down and confuse that issue and tell people they should never eat almonds. That's just, that's one example. Another one that just was in my office today. Somebody, why would you sell grapes? Don't you know that those are sugar bombs? Sugar bombs. One of those doctors is going out and telling people to never eat grapes. And I don't know exactly what else they teach because that came secondhand. I didn't listen to that one. But they're telling people not to eat grapes because they're sugar bombs. And don't we, and again, grapes, we've been eating grapes for thousands of years. Our bodies are very, very much our microbiome, I should say, is very much adapted to eating grapes and almonds. And, those are not things that there's any chance that, they're not new to human agriculture by any means. And at the same time, in fact, this doctor apparently said you may as well be eating an M&M as a grape. Well, I mean, come on. It's like, because it's just a sugar bomb. But didn't we learn about the difference between a monosaccharide and a polysaccharide back in grade school chemistry? They're not the same thing. Not even close. When you have high fructose corn syrup, you're dealing with a monosaccharide. You have grapes, it's one of the most complex polysaccharides on the face of the earth. Well, almost. It's right up there, right up there. Things like Concord grapes are very, very complex. In fact, I don't know if you use that, Dr. Monzo, but many naturopaths actually recommend Concord grape juice to prevent stomach flus and such, for people who are worried about getting the flu, and it works. It really does. And there's anyway. That's kind of, I think, the other thing that AZure has tried to be that stable voice. That no, this is about reality and not about the fads and not about the money that's spent on advertising, or sometimes things go viral-ish. Right now it's this seed oil thing, and people don't understand the difference between different kinds of seed oils. They're about 90% wrong, but very strong 10% wrong. I mean, 90% right. Most seed oils are hexane derived, but not all of them are. And some seed oils are absolutely essential, for our health, especially like flaxseed oil, for instance, very important to our health. But yet, all seed oils are thrown in one big category. And if you look at it, I mean, uh, something like a sunflower seed, you can press the oil out of that with your fingers. Do some companies use hexane to get sunflower oil out? Yes, some do. But if you know where it's coming from, you don't have to. Sunflower oil, you know, doesn't have to be derived using hexane. And I agree, hexane derived oils, don't use them. They're bad. It's not a good idea. Our body, we're made to eat oils and fats, but we are not made to eat hexane. So there's a difference. And the crazy thing is now, because of this seed oil craze, that all seed oils are bad, the demand for avocado oil has gone through the roof. And now they are using avocado to get avocado oil out in the quantities that the market needs. They're using hexane to get the avocado oil out. Almost everyone, except the certified organic ones, are now using hexane in the avocado processing, because it takes a while to grow avocado trees. You can't just get a bunch more avocados.
That's true.
That takes about 8 years, and this happened too fast. Everyone wants avocado oil now. And so now you're getting avocado oil with the hexane that was the whole reason to get away from seed oil. Just, and these are the kinds of swings that happen when we just let emotional things come into play. And that's one of the things that I really feel like AZure needs to be, is that stable voice. what's real logic and what's true.
And you're so right, because everything media based, social media, the things that are getting thrown at people every day so fast, the information, the probably mostly wrong information, and people don't know what to believe. I kind of call the last, year or so, everybody's throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. What's real, what's
Mhm.
true. Let's try this. Let's try this supplement. Let's try this food. Let's try this diet. Let's try GLP-1 to lose weight, because everybody's been eating all of the processed foods in the middle of Kroger. So, what you're saying really leads into, when we're looking at what is faith over fear in
Yeah.
living abundantly without fear. I mean, we're all, we know that, we should be eating everything that comes directly from the ground. That's not possible for people every day, especially in the society. But how do we help people have that faith over fear and really live abundantly as they can and have that faith?
Well, I think, I think that our, you know, our faith, as I mentioned a little bit ago, I think faith is one of the legs of health it's as important as food is in overall health and well-being. How, and you can call that faith or emotional um, state or whatever you want. I like to call it faith. It's it's our it's our emotional. Do we have faith in God, or do we have faith in um, in what we're doing? Do we have a purpose? Do we have, or are we fearful about everything that comes along? And right now, in many ways, our whole society, including corporate America and government, everything is about fear.
Mhm.
So if it's political, they want to scare people that, you're not going to get your Social Security or something because of this political thing. Oh, that's going to be so scary. They're going to, the economy's going to go this way or that way. If it's corporate, they want to scare you about, oh, we need to sell you this thing because you're not going to fit in with your neighbors, or you know how many pharmaceutical ads are out there that are trying to
Mm.
scare you about
Yeah.
indigestion or something else.
Yeah.
There, everything is from a negative standpoint. It's kind of like, motivated by the whip, but the whip
Mhm.
is fear, and most fear is within ourselves.
Mhm.
A lot of times we're afraid of things that don't, the fear doesn't actually exist. As a society, look, I can go back to, raising kids. We talked about maybe raising healthy kids. So many parents today, because they've been conditioned to do this, are so worried about the physical safety of their kids. They
Yeah.
make sure they are sitting on the couch with a computer in their hand, because if they were out riding a bike, they might have a bike wreck and hurt themselves. If they were climbing a tree, they might fall. If
Mhm.
they were out on the streets, a car might hit them. If they're hiking in the woods, there may be a cougar. Some of them get really strange fears, or a coyote or something, things that are so unlikely, but yet they're willing to let them sit and emotionally destroy their
Mhm.
minds because it's nice and safe sitting on the sofa. They're not out, they're not out where a wild animal is, or where a bike might run into a tree, or whatever those things are that kids would normally do. because they're so fearful. Or if they do ride their bike, oh, wait, got to get knee pads and helmets and all this stuff. You know
Right.
what? Those heads will heal, those skin knees will heal. The emotional scars that go from not being able to do those things are way deeper than any scars that they might get from having a bike wreck or falling out of a tree. I'm not saying there can't be danger. I mean, I suppose, especially an unhealthy child might actually hurt themselves seriously in a bike wreck. But that's typically not, not, that's not where the danger lies.
Right.
Do we have the faith that God will take care of our kids as we allow them to explore his world, whether it's
Yeah.
on a bike or a horse or on foot or or get out in the garden and eat dirt. How many kids, how many parents are absolutely terrified that their child's going to eat dirt? And now we
Yeah.
know that eating dirt is part of what builds the microbiome. I'm talking about
Right.
their 1 and 2-year-olds, right?
That's right.
How it wasn't a danger. That dirt wasn't going to hurt them,
No,
you
we
know?
all ate dirt. We drank out of the hose. We rode our bikes without helmets. We
Mhm.
survived. We drove in
Well,
cars without
not
seatbelts.
only survived, but well, in August, I was in Washington, D.C., and I met with Kelly Means, who is on the Kennedy team.
Mhm.
And he actually was saying that today, in the children today, 18 and under, that 55% of the children today have been diagnosed with some kind of a chronic disease.
Yeah.
55%. 50 years ago, that was 5%.
Yeah.
It has gone up by astronomically.
Yeah.
More than half of the children are diagnosed with some chronic disease, whether it's an autoimmune disorder, diabetes, all those things that affect children today. Those things did not happen because of the fear that we had of them doing something in the outdoors or you know or shooting arrows or throwing knives or anything else that kids get a whim to do. Those things
Mhm.
all it wasn't that's not the danger.
Yeah.
The danger is the degenerate diet that would cause these autoimmune diseases,
Yeah.
the excess sugar that would probably cause the diabetes in most cases. Sometimes that's multi-generational. I get that. Occasionally that's the sins of the parents, so
Yep.
to speak. I'm
Absolutely.
not saying sin in this religious sense, but
Right.
it caused by the diet choices and lifestyle choices of the parents. Some children are basically born handicapped that way.
Right.
But there
Mhm.
is no reason under the sun that we need to be facing the real dangers. We need to have faith that the way God intended, he gave us legs and he gave children curiosity. We have faith that he did it right. He made dirt and he made little babies put dirt in their mouth. That's all. That's the, we're trusting God. Then we believe that that is that is the naturally occurring thing. These artificial things are the things that we should be afraid of. Are we going to give our baby, our child, an aspirin or a Tylenol or any of those kinds of things? Or are we
Mm.
going to go back to the things that God actually made,
Hmm.
the herbs of the field and the
Yeah.
food? That's, so that's kind of putting it into context of faith over fear. Believe, take God at his word, do the
Hmm.
things that, you know, allow our children and ourselves to do those things. Why would we be afraid to go, you know, hike a mountain or because we could get hurt? Yeah, I suppose we could get hurt. We could get hurt anytime. But, are we willing to take risks and trust God with those risks for the greater good? so that we can be hiking on a mountain with our children and creating those re- relationship bonds that are so important.
Mm.
And then we're taking faith over fear. And, COVID was probably the most classic example of that because it was so extremely obvious
Yeah.
who had faith and who had fear.
Yeah.
We saw
Yeah.
that in the Azure
Yeah.
drop points, even amongst the Azure customer base. Our drivers would go out, they'd never know what to expect. Said, well, we'd go to one drop and they would have, tape on the blacktop so far apart, and everyone was staying in their car, and they had to set those that far apart on the orders, and nobody was there. And they'd go to the next drop down, and everyone was hugging and patting each other on the back and scooting in. And it's like, you know, and was there a difference in occurrence of COVID? Probably not.
Yeah.
There was some COVID cases, probably in both cases. I don't know. But
Yeah.
my guess is there was probably less than the ones that were actually, having a real personal relationship. And
Mhm.
then, government made us so afraid that we had to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart and not go to church and all these things
Yeah.
because we're afraid.
Yeah.
But yet, these are exactly the things that we're instructed to do by God. Do we have the faith? Are we going to go to church even if we could get sick because there's supposedly, um, illness that transmits from person to person? Those of us that are healthy, we don't really have to worry about those kind of illnesses. Even if we do get some kind of transmittable disease, it's minor. It's it's not a big deal. And our immune systems are amazing.
He made us perfect. And, a couple things you said in there, I think a big piece, I mean, everything that we focus on is spirit, mind, body, and nature-based healing. And this is where this collaboration with you is so important. And the piece that's been missing is it's been turned upside down. Everything about the media, everything about social media, what we've been told is fear-based. Everything is be fearful. Well, just like you said, God gave us the faith. We have faith that we're going
Yeah,
to be
God
okay.
says to be faithful, media says to be fearful, and those are the
Exactly.
the exact opposites. In
Yeah.
fact, my Bible
Total.
says, "Fear not." I believe 365
Yep.
times.
Yep.
I heard
It's
some. I didn't count that. Somebody else told me that, but hey,
I know. It's
One
probably
for every
more,
day.
but I used to think, yeah, it's probably at least 365 times, but it's more. And it really is that spiritual connection. When people understand that spiritual connection with the Creator, with our Father, that itself takes out the fear. When people can step into that place and that relationship and be with Him and not be afraid, it takes care of all of the fear that the world just keeps pouring in. So now, people have to have more discernment for what's true, what's fake, what's not real, and that faith really has to be strong to be overcoming the fear that's coming at people every
Mhm.
single day. They're just bombarded whether and I haven't watched my TV for 5 years. Like I turned it off. The fear that people get from the news, the fear that they get from social media, the sky is falling. That faith just has to be solid. And you're right, it's that faith in what He gave us. Number
Mhm.
one, who we are, we're made in the image of God, what He gave us on the earth to eat, how we stay healthy in Him, as well as what He gives us in nature. That faith has to be number one for people to even survive. I wonder right now, people that don't have that solid relationship, how they're making it, how they're surviving in this world of fear, because it really is coming at people fast. And I love that. It's like you can live abundantly
Mhm.
without fear. And it is the food base, but it's also, that spiritual base is huge.
Yep.
there is nothing quite as important as having that that with, and and truthfully, people that are thriving, even if they're not believers, they have faith in something,
Mhm.
even if it's not the right God. Um, they do. Typically, the ones that have faith in nothing are, you see, I see that all the time. It's on the way to destruction.
Mhm.
Even if they have faith in humanism or something else, they're they're better off than having no faith whatsoever.
And it's getting more fearful.
It just,
Alfonso,
yeah, it just
what do you
adds to
think?
it.
Definitely. Well, I was thinking this is, everything he's been saying, what Dave's been saying is right on. I think years ago, we spent, I spent a lot more time educating people just on health. But now, I think we spend the majority of our time trying to re-educate people from all the lies that are out there and all the fear. Because everywhere
Yeah.
you turn around, there's another person out there just spreading fear-based nonsense. And
Oh,
they do this
scarier
like he was
almonds
saying.
now.
Yeah, and like he was saying, they do it a lot with this food stuff. I see it all the time. People, oh, you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat that, you shouldn't eat this because it has this chemical in it and it has this, and it's like God didn't mess up. He didn't
Right.
mess up when he made the foods. And I think a lot of times what this so-called science that's out there is looking at is like, well, what are you really studying? Are you studying stuff that you invented in a laboratory, or are you actually really looking at what God created in food? Um, and maybe they should be asking a better question, which is, maybe it's not the food that's the problem. Maybe it's what we did to the food, what we added to the food, or what we took away from the food that wasn't supposed to be there. And maybe that's
That's
why
it.
people are reacting to the food, not so much the food itself.
And
So,
that's exactly the Azure position. I feel
yep.
like that's that's precisely what we want to be, what I call clean eating, is when we eat food the way God made it, or as close to the way He made it as possible. I'm not saying that some processing is out of order, but it doesn't have any additives in that processing that are created by man science, and it doesn't have any hidden ingredients that were used in the agriculture and the growing of that food that, you know, is many times absolutely toxic, made to kill things. They're
Mm,
insecticides, they're made to kill insects. They they're made to kill stuff. Insects are living beings too, and chemicals that kill insects kill us too, just not as fast.
Right.
it reminds you of the invisible creates the visible. So we have all these parables and principles in Scripture where he uses agriculture and he uses foods that teach us about spiritual things. And so it's so interesting that when it comes to his word, he says, do not add to it, do not take away, do not change it. And it's like, well, you can take that principle right over to his food, which is, symbolic for his word. It's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be changing and adding and subtracting from what he created as food
Mhm.
either. And that kind of gets into the topic of, you know, one of the big things we deal with in America here is glyphosate and GMOs. Um,
Mhm.
how dangerous are these things really for us, David?
Well, GMOs, I am not 100% sure how dangerous they are in and of themselves, but the purpose of 99% of the GMOs is to allow the farmers to use more chemicals, particularly glyphosates. Um, most GMOs are things like Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready soybeans,
Mm,
Roundup Ready alfalfa. These are, you know, the whole purpose of the genetic modification was to allow these dangerous chemicals to be sprayed right on the crops, right during the growing, and the crop doesn't die. everything else around it, all the weeds die. I mean, that's the theory. There's getting to be, you know, resistant weeds now too. But the weeds don't, the weeds die, the crops don't die. And you're spraying that right on the crop. And talk about something that is absolutely synthetic in nature. Glyphosate is the top of the list. And the crazy thing about glyphosate is it's a synthetic protein, right? It's a toxic protein. It's a protein amino acid combination of toxicity. And when it gets in our bodies don't absolutely recognize it as a poison. They think it's a protein. And that's why it builds in the bodies and particularly in the joints. That the body pushes that glyphosate to the joints because it thinks it's a protein. Proteins is what keeps our joints lubricated. It's proteins, you know, amino acids, I should say. I mean, not the entire protein spectrum. Our joints are lubricated with that. You know, our muscle is built from proteins. All of those things are, you know, that's the way that we're built. When you have an artificial protein, and not only is it an artificial protein that our body doesn't really know how to deal with very well, because, you know, it's not found in nature anywhere. It's completely synthetic. And but in addition to that, this protein is specifically designed to decrease the uptake of minerals in a plant. A plant doesn't die from glyphosate. It dies from disease because the glyphosate has destroyed the plant's immune system. A plant's immune system is primarily comprised of manganese, actually. Manganese is the primary mineral component of a plant's immune system. Now, when when the uptake is completely cut off, i.e. the glyphosate gets on the leaves of that plant, it can't uptake that in any way. The plant usually dies from fusarium wilt, which is a disease that's present all over in the plant world. And that's how glyphosate works on a plant. Now, they say, oh, well, that doesn't translate to people because our immune system isn't manganese based. Our immune system is completely different. It's white blood cells or whatever. Um, and I agree. Our immune systems are a lot more complicated than a plant's immune system. But since glyphosate has been on the market and been in absolutely saturating the food system, we have seen exponential growth in autoimmune disorders of all sorts. Autoimmune used to be relatively rare. Now it's not. I mean, Dr. Monzo, you probably see an autoimmune patient every day. It's just, it's common, absolutely common. It's just our immune system is not built. And even worse, our joints are not built for those kinds of proteins. You know, just before glyphosate, how many people did you know that had joint replacements? Was that even a thing? Joint replacements? I mean, maybe some old grandma that had super bad osteoporosis or bone density loss because, you know, they weren't eating calcium or their, you know, system was clear out of balance. You might see that and they had super bad bone loss and they fell and broke a hip or something, and you might see a joint replacement. Extremely rare. Now, 40, 50-year-olds are getting joint replacements left and right. I just talked to one of my wife's cousins. He just had his 5th joint replacement. I didn't know we had that many joints to replace. Both knees, both elbows, and now an ankle, I think. Like joint replacements. And he's younger than I am. And it's like,
hips.
yeah, knees, hips, shoulders, elbows, ankles. one after the other.
Spine degeneration.
Yeah, now they're
Lots
going
of
to
people having spine
fuse your
issues.
spine.
Yeah,
Our joints are made never to wear out.
yeah.
The more we use them, the more lubrication goes on them, the better they get. They don't get worse from use. And the doctors go out there and have the audacity to tell these people, "Oh, you've just used it a lot. It has a lot of miles on it. It's just wearing out, just like an old car part."
I get tired.
Horse feathers. That's not the way the body works.
God made us perfect.
He,
God made
he,
us perfect.
our bodies, our joints don't wear out. I mean, yes, we age, but our joints should last until our last breath. That's they're made to last till our last breath. And and if they would even think about it, a marathon runner does not get their joints wearing out faster than the guy who sits on the couch. In fact, it's probably slower, even if they both eat bad. The marathon runner is his joints are going to last longer than the couch potato that's sitting there watching TV most of the time, because at least he's getting more lubrication, even if he's getting a lot of the glyphosate protein amino acids in his joints. Not saying, but if they could cut it out, if we can get those artificial, and glyphosate's not the only synthetic protein. Most toxins are amino acid based.
Mhm.
So a lot of the toxins that we get from other sources are also synthesized proteins. So I don't want to just say it's just glyphosate. It's not. I mean, we can get these from household products. We can get them from, cleaners, shampoos, other agricultural chemicals. Um,
Yeah, it's all around us.
there's a lot of different places that we can get the synthetic, but that's poisons. I mean, all the way to poisons that we've had around for a long time. If you want to talk about strychnine, it was made from a synthetic amino acid chain, but found a little bit more in nature, and it kills rats, right? And it kills people too if you eat enough of it. And these are um, our bodies can't necessarily handle these kinds of and so when we're talking about proteins, I just want to point just one other thing on my little soapbox here on protein. Um, when a plant is healthy, a plant produces a complex protein chain. The amino acid, it has up to 12 amino acids in the chain. We need somewhere around 20 to 22 amino acids to make perfect protein for our bodies, so that you know, different scientists slightly disagree on a couple of those, but roughly 20 to 22 amino acids for optimum health. When we use in modern agriculture, there we use a product called ammonia, and it comes in various forms: anhydrous ammonia, aqueous ammonia, etc. Their ammonia is used as a synthetic nitrogen. So nitrogen in its natural state is created by microbes in the soil, and because it's one of the hardest things for the microbes to convert, nitrogen is extremely available. The air that we breathe is full of nitrogen. A large percentage is nitrogen, but it's not utilizable to a plant until it's broken down by bacteria that lives in the soil. Just like a lot of our food is not usable to our bodies until the bacteria in our digestive system transforms that to a usable state that it can go into our bloodstream and be used at a cellular level, right? The same thing is true in the soil with plants. And so nitrogen is converted by microbes, but so are all the other minerals and nutrients in the soil, they're all converted in the soil by soil microbe or the soil microbiome, if you want to, liken it to the human. But we call it or EM for short, and agriculture, environmental beneficial microbes is basically what that is. So what modern agriculture has done is they have taken and synthesized nitrogen, so it doesn't have to be created in the soil. And because it's the growth regulator of the plant, it makes the plant grow bigger. Well, in modern agriculture, most farmers are caught in the middle. They have to hold out both hands and they say, how much? How much do I have to pay for, fuel and fertilizer and anything, whatever, tractors? They hold out the other hand and they say, how much will you give me for my grain or my beef or whatever? So that's set by the Chicago Board of Trade or the Iowa Beef Council or whatever. That is not, found that they hold both hands out. The only thing they can control is quantity.
Mhm.
So in order to be economically viable, they have to increase quantity. Quality is going to suffer. So one of the first things they do is they go in and use these ammonia products, primarily anhydrous ammonia, which is ammonia in a gas form that they insert directly into the soil, combines with soil and soil microbes, and including with humus, and it holds that in the soil. Then when the plant grows, it sees that ammonia in the soil. It thinks that the soil has converted nitrogen for it because it's a synthetic. It looks like nitrogen to the plant, just like some of these amino acids our bodies don't know how to deal with. The plants see that, and it's not exactly amino acid, but it's a mineral, nitrogen. Um, and so the plant begins to grow big, a lot more mass to the plant, where and so the farmer gets a higher yield because he's getting paid by the ton. This is commodities world. Gets more tons of corn or wheat or what, grass or whatever it is that he's growing. And but the thing is, the soil microbes, they didn't put on all 92 nutrients that the plant needs. They only put on, most farmers only put on 3, N, P, and K.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all they look at, because those are the only 2 that P and K will, if they don't have enough of that, the N isn't as effective. So it makes the plant grow great big. It actually decreases the amount of soil microbes because that nitrogen in the soil is actually damaging them. Then the plant grows bigger, but the microbes are less. So all the other minerals are diluted in the plant. It becomes more and more diluted. And a classic of this is the wheat scenario. So back in the day, before the 1950s, all the wheat was an ancient grain, and they could not use ammonia fertilizers on wheat because it would grow too tall and then it would tip over. And as soon as the wind blew, it would fall over. And so they couldn't, and it would quit, producing. So they got less by putting more nitrogen on. So they didn't really use synthetic nitrogen on wheat up until what was called the Green Revolution. During that time, a couple of scientists got together and said, we're going to develop grain varieties that can handle this nitrogen, this ammonia nitrogen, I should say. So, so they developed these semi-dwarf varieties of wheat that grow a lot shorter, and they have a little thicker stalk from a genetic standpoint. And so then the farmer can put on this anhydrous ammonia, and it makes the wheat grow more mass, more wheat, But the crazy thing is the only amino acid that can really be formed from the synthetic nitrogen in the plant is L-glutamine.
Ooh.
And then we wonder, wheat is pretty high in protein. Again, it's another plant that we've been eating as a, as a species for thousands of years. Wheat
Yeah.
it was the foundation of civilization, it was often called, because it was the first crop that could be grown in enough area that we could actually build large cities and it could be easily transported. A lot of nutrients in wheat. It's about 15% protein, about 20 some percent carbohydrate. It's a pretty balanced food, right? Um, and so civilizations were built on wheat. But now we have a wheat that is way out of balance in its amino acids. Most ancient grain wheats have at least 12 amino acids present in pretty good balance. Modern wheats are about 90% L-glutamine, and they still have 15% protein. So if you can imagine the difference in that balance that happens when it gets into our bodies. And then we wonder, how come all these people are suddenly allergic to wheat? Why do we have celiac disease? Why is wheat suddenly the bad guy? Another
Right.
thing, it's been demonized.
Yeah.
And partly for good reason, because we now have these modern wheats that are completely throwing the balance of our protein off in our bodies.
Yeah.
The balance of the amino acid chain, actually. A balance of the amino acid chain is what builds strong muscles. It's what keeps our joints lubricated. It does all these great things in our body. You know, we're talking about, it's sugars, it's amino acids, it's fats, right? Or lipids. These are the things that, we use on a very, very regular, they're the macronutrients, so to speak, of human existence, or really all life. And these are the things that these farm chemicals, even though you might not be able to see it from the outside, and if you were to do a test, the protein's still the same. So you do, protein content, you look at nutrition facts on the nutrition facts panel. Oh, still 14% protein in that wheat. They don't tell you what the balance of that is. That's your difference in really eating clean.
It's so
And then on
interesting
top of
because,
that, it's refined and processed.
yeah.
So then they
And
add
it's,
in all the synthetics on top of that, and
Well, it's so
iron
deficient that
shavings and glyphosates on it, and
yeah, that's not counting the glyphosates and some of those things that, you know, a lot of the wheats today, especially in the northern tier of the US, they put actually glyphosate on the wheat. And wheat, it's not even genetically modified. This is conventional, non-genetically modified wheat. But because up north, it's pretty hard to get it all to ripen evenly in the season. So back in the day, they used to go out in the fields. Like this is like North Dakota and Canada and Montana. They would go out in the fields, and that's a lot of the wheat's raised in those areas. They would go out and swathe the wheat first and cut it and put it in windrows, kind of like it was for hay, and then let it dry, and that cut it off from any moisture source. And then it would dry, and then they would go in with the combine and pick it up off these from these windrows with the combine and thrash it. But they figured out that if they go into the field right, when they would normally swathe it and they spray it with glyphosate, it will kill all the green areas in the plant, and it'll start drying standing up. And so they can only have to take the combine over the field once. So they can straight combine it, in other words, with a header, cut and thrash it all in one pass instead of doing two passes. But you're getting that glyphosate put on the wheat just days before it actually is harvested. And
I
that
just,
doesn't happen in all wheat. I mean, a farmer doesn't do that if if they're down south, if they're in Texas, they're not going to do that because it gets hot and the wheat gets ripe, and it's just added expense for them. But up in the Dakotas and Canada, where the vast majority of the bread wheat is raised, that's exactly what happens.
You look at what God gave us from the earth, everything natural, and you look at what we've done to it, the things that we've created out of what God gave us and just ruined it. It just continues, we try and create something that's better or bigger or faster or whatever, and it just is completely upside down from what God gave us, eating directly from the earth and the abundance that's there. No wonder people are so sick. And you're right, you look at all of the autoimmune diseases and just going into any grocery store, it's sickening to walk in and see everything processed and everything in packages on the shelves, and you just have to go look at it. Like, I'll tell people, shop the perimeter. If you have to go into a grocery store, just shop the perimeter. Go for the whole foods, whether it's, eggs and vegetables and meat, whatever, do the whole foods. But I remember um, when I woke up to what this was, it was 2001, and my husband had died, and I was walking down an aisle in Safeway, and I was walking down the chip and cookie aisle, and I stopped and I just looked and I thought, I wonder what a caveman would think if he was here right now and could pull anything off a shelf and eat it 5 years from now. And it was just that awakening of like, oh my gosh, everything that's sitting on these shelves is poison and won't last. Bread isn't supposed to last weeks and weeks. These things that are made now, that are created, aren't supposed to last. You're not supposed to be able to go to a shelf and have something has a shelf life of 4 years from now. And you look at the ingredients and all the chemicals that you're eating, it's like God gave us what we need. So all of this creation, or trying to make it easier, or fast food, or help families, is doing the opposite and literally destroying people's systems and lives because of the unhealthy food that they're putting in. And then you add to it, like what you said, all that poison that's going on before it even gets to the store.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because there are people that are making bread like that, where you can't even read all the ingredients and preservatives and stuff that are in there, doesn't mean that bread is bad. We can
Right.
eat, organically produced grain, freshly milled flour, sourdough bread.
Yeah.
You're talking about a very, very good food.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with that food. In fact, there's a lot right with it. The sourdough actually helps
Yeah.
fortify the microbiome, the, the protein, and say organic. I would even go, I love ancient grain stuff too,
Yep.
but organic by our ancient grain breads, you're going to get amazing amounts of nutrients, and probably they're only, good organic sourdough bread probably only has two ingredients,
Yeah.
or maybe three if they put salt in it. You've got
That's
wheat,
it.
water, and maybe salt. That's all
And
that
the
needs
and
to
the
be in
sour and the
there.
sourdough starter. That's
But
all I use for my bread.
the
That's it.
sourdough starter,
That's
if
it.
it is just made out of wheat, right? Or some kind of
The
grain,
flour, yeah.
flour of some sort. That's all that, so it really doesn't add another ingredient. All you're doing is adding a fresh batch of microbial
Mm.
action. You're raising your bread with microbes or naturally occurring yeasts, unlike baker's yeast, which is synthetic and highly processed. And, it creates a wonderful product. So let's, as we look at this thing, it's not about cutting all these things out of the diet. It's about transforming these things back to the way God made them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a big difference too. Like I make homemade sourdough bread and I use ancient grains and organic flour. There's such a difference when you eat it. If you were to eat a normal hamburger bun, processed or sandwich or any kind of bread that's out there compared to like homemade sourdough, or even if somebody made it for you, the difference you feel in your body, the difference you feel in your gut, there isn't the same sort of bloating or heaviness. You feel it's good. It's not overwhelming. You get full just from a normal amount, but you're not having all of those chemicals that are in there. So you're right. It's like, how do people, we look at it, how can people really, you know, look at that homesteading ability in their home? Like what would be a good way for people to, kind of homestead in their home? What would you suggest for, the best things that people could do to step out of dealing with the synthetics and the chemicals, and maybe, 5 things that they could just do at home that would get them stepping that direction?
Hmm. Number one is know where your food comes from. Number two is create a pantry. Have a pantry in your house of good, healthy, organic food that where it came from to some degree, or and that's one of the things that Azure does for things that are harder to find, is we vet those things all the time. That's what we do. We make sure that we get the highest quality of the highest quality. And then what and then learn to use these high quality ingredients from your pantry to make basic meals. There that's that's the start. Then if you want to branch out into baking bread and those kinds of things, that's wonderful. If you want to branch out into an urban garden, or those are wonderful things. Kitchen garden, at least grow grains, beautiful. All those are wonderful things. But the main thing, do we really have um, the building blocks in the food that we eat for optimum health? And do we really not have any poisons, or
Mm.
no more poisons than our bodies can handle? I don't know if we can be 100% poison free completely. We live in a certain amount of a poison world, but we definitely, absolutely, um, can minimize that to almost zero just by um, what we eat, how we eat, and how we take care. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that it breaks my heart when I watch kids playing in a yard and there's not a single dandelion or piece of clover in it. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, beautiful yard with nothing but grass, but you know how that got that way?
Uh-huh.
And then they let the kids or play out in that yard, or it's just, you know, and their pets and everything else, and it just absolutely, um, those same chemicals, usually, if you do weed and feed, just from the standard store, um, that the base of that chemical is something called 2,4-D. It's exactly the same chemical base that was in Agent Orange that destroyed so many of the
Mm.
veterans in the Vietnam War.
Oh my gosh.
It's the same active ingredient.
Wow.
Different name, different inerts, exactly the same active ingredient.
What would you suggest? Let's say people have home gardens and they're just growing things in bags or boxes or their dirt. What would you suggest just as maybe a fertilizer or something? Obviously, we're not killing all the weeds. We just pull weeds out of the bags or the box. But what would you suggest would be good fertilizer for people just to use to, boost not really boost the production, but maybe boost the nutrients of maybe just home gardens?
Well, the microbes, what you're really trying to do is create a more microbially rich soil. And so there's different things that microbes eat. I mean, they can even work on rock, so to speak, and clays and stuff, but their primary food source is humus, i.e., other plant material that's been incorporated into the soil, compost, so to speak. That's things that are being incorporated into the soil, and especially protein source. Again, microbes also need protein. Remember, a microbe is not like a plant. A microbe cannot produce energy from sunlight. Only a plant can do that. Photosynthesis is the only way that that can happen. Plants are the only thing that produces energy in the form of sugars or saccharide, um, that are used as the building blocks of that plant, and they're used as energy for pretty much all life on Earth. That's where that's what that comes from. Microbes included. The microbes have to have the energy from the plants to survive. And a healthy plant actually exudes sugars through its roots to feed the microbes to help them stay healthier, or
Hmm.
basically to have energy to colonize. And the healthier plant you have, the more microbes you're going to have. So that's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Plant can't live without the microbes can't live without the plant. It's the way it works in nature. Now, so if you have denatured soil where that plant has not been giving the microbes enough food, you want to be able to give it some kind of a protein source from the outside. So whether that's compost or some manure, some kind of protein source that way. One of my favorites for home gardeners, because this is so people who home garden, as an organic commercial grower, we do pretty extensive testings and stuff. And, you know, plus we've been doing it for 40 years, so I can just look at a plant and, it talks to me. But but if you're a home gardener and you don't have that experience, or you can't do the complicated testing because it gets expensive for a home gardener, um, one thing that is easy to use is liquid fish. That's a very clean protein source, comes from ocean fish. Well, I mean, maybe there's brands out there that don't, but most of it comes from ocean fish, and anything AZure carries would. And those fish are, pretty clean um, source of protein. And so what it does, but they're very utilizable. Fish is very quick. Microbes can eat that very fast. Unlike like if you were tilling in a um, straw or something, it would take a lot longer, maybe a year to completely consume that straw. This fish, the microbes will eat that in a very, very short period of time. So you can kind of get your plants healthy with it's maybe a little bit of a hack, but it does the right things in the soil in the long run. So you can put liquid fish on, it will boost the microbes, it pushes the microbes really hard, but it only
Interesting.
gives them about 2 weeks worth of food, maybe a little more. And then the microbes begin to die off very quickly. The die off of the microbes actually feeds the plant. So the dead microbe bodies become optimum fertilizer for the plant. The plant begins to grow a lot more. It also begins to exude more food into the soil for the microbes. But if you have fairly poor soil and you want to do that, you can do that again. So as soon as the die-off starts to happen, at about 10 to 14 days, you go on and you put on another batch of liquid fish. you get that spike again. And every time you bring your soil just an itty bit higher in its, we call that cation exchange. But that means the available nutrients for the microbes. That includes the proteins, the humuses, and the oxygen. Those are all things that the microbes need in the soil. If you get super compacted soil, it doesn't have enough nitrogen. Those are all aspects of creating a optimum environment for the microbes to flourish. And if the
So
microbes are flourishing, your plants will flourish.
is liquid fish, is it like a liquid in a bottle, or is it fish that's been ground up and you're putting it in? What is liquid fish? What
Yeah, it's
form does
basic.
it come in?
Yeah, so at AZure we sell it in a concentrate, but it's basically fish that's been ground up, and these are fish that are of lesser market value, really don't
Okay.
have a big market value. They're, you know, and sometimes they use fish parts as well. So if they're filleting a salmon, they'll put everything but the fillet into that.
Okay.
Um,
So it's ground up
Yeah, so
fish,
they
but it's
grind it up
liquid.
very fine,
Okay.
and actually it's slightly pre-digested by bacteria. They put just a little bit of like molasses or something with it, help it to pre-digest, and then it concentrates into what's called a fish emulsion. And
Okay.
then so we sell one under the Ellie's Eden brand, and it's the best one that we found. That's why we put it under our label. That's one of our labels. But and I've used probably 100 different liquid fishes over the last 50 years, but so that's so far the best one that we found. Um, so we put it in a bottle for home gardeners because it's got all the right combinations to make it work the best. Another thing, if you have very deficient soil, it's like a new garden and you're breaking out a lawn or a driveway or something, to boost start the microbes a little bit. If you do like the fish, just add a little trace of molasses to your fish mixture, and that will jumpstart the microbes on the very early stages, because the microbes are, a lot of that soil, they're pretty deficient. In a healthy soil, a handful of soil should have as many microbes in it as humans on Earth.
Wow.
I have seen plate counts on soil in some of the denatured soil that are as low as 300. The plate counts is about how many microbes should be in that amount of soil. It should be somewhere in the 6 to 10 billion range. I've
Wow.
seen it as low as 300 come back on tests. That's the difference between healthy
Wow.
and not healthy soil. And that absolutely translates to the nutrient content in our food.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
In fact, I just met a guy who he's testing um, food quality. And so one of the first things he did, so he came up with this machine that tests food. It's like they use for testing different kinds of minerals in like
Mhm.
metal, for like a metal recycler or something, but he refined this down to test mineral content in plants and in food. So he was said, well, let's look at spinach and see what the difference is in the available iron in spinach, because a lot of people say, oh, anemic people should eat spinach. And spinach should have iron and copper and a bunch of nutrients in the spinach naturally, but he
Mhm.
only tested for iron. I wish he had tested more, but he didn't. He just tested for iron. But from the highest, and he did over 100 different samples from different farms, from supermarkets, from all over. From the highest, from the lowest to the highest was a factor of 100 times as much iron in the spinach So the lowest quality spinach had 1% of the iron that the highest quality spinach had in it.
Wow.
That's, and that was his, that's actually lab tested. Very expensive
Wow.
because these are very expensive tests. And he actually got some grants to do that. And he's now working on beef. He's trying to test different sources of beef. I believe also iron because this machine does really well with bioavailable iron. And anyway, he said it's not quite as dramatic in beef, but he doesn't have all of his results back yet. But he's seeing extremely radical results in beef as well. So if you're thinking, I'm going to get my minerals from my food, if you're eating the low quality food and you were to eat 1 ounce of spinach would give you enough iron for the day, which it probably should, you would have to eat 100 ounces of spinach of that low quality spinach to get the same amount of, and who could eat 100 ounces of spinach in a day? 1 ounce, yes. 100,
100,
ain't no
no.
way, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you would have to do to get the same amount of nutrients. And that's why agriculture is so important to human health. The difference in the way that this is raised. And and sometimes if we're, maybe even the best organic farmers aren't perfect yet. And that's where supplementation may come into play as well for a healthy person. I know there's 300 million sick Americans that need supplementation. I probably more right now. But if you're actually a healthy, in optimum health, trying to get your nutrients from your food, if you're not actually getting food that you can grow or know where it's being grown or know how it's being grown, and we're trying to perfect labels and stuff, but those are only as good as, they're only so good. We can only go so far with a label. Um, and Azure's, they're trying to vet that all day long, every day. That's what we do. But, there's still, there's a huge, huge range is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of times we're getting something in the middle. If you're getting it from Azure, you're not getting the 1% stuff, but I
Yeah.
can't guarantee you're not getting an 80 instead of 100,
And
sometimes.
your knowledge over time and everything that you know about agriculture and what you've done with Azure and how you provide people with this. There was something you said a second ago that I know Alfonso has a question about, which goes alongside with the foods. What else does Azure have that goes along with this, which we haven't even talked about yet, Alfonso?
Oh, the supplement line, the Azure Well.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I was just going to say,
So
this is, we come from the dust, right?
yeah.
The earth. We're made out of the dust of the earth. So when you understand holistic health, um, the body and how it works is very much the same as agriculture and how we grow plants. So the gut microbiome is so important for health. And I think it's interesting. One of the Azure Well podcasts we do, we were talking about one of the products they carry, which is the cod liver oil. And the cod liver oil is so important because it has retinol. So retinol is a form of vitamin A, but it's only a animal source vitamin A. It's not plant source. And it's interesting because years ago there were scientists who did studies on the different forms of vitamin A. And they found that retinol was one of the only forms of vitamin A that actually helps the gut microbiome in the gut. And it's a major nutrient that you get from fish. And that's why we use the cod liver oil. And then, of course, you need that healthy um, retinol for your ceruloplasmin to work, so your iron copper recycling system works. And so, this is one of those things that people overlook, how important the microbiome is for you to have the minerals and everything from your food and for your gut to work. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people, um, if you're used to a standard American diet, you start reacting to all these bad foods because they're not really food. And then when you get into the good stuff, you might still have problems. And that's because your gut microbiome is all messed up.
Mhm.
And so as you start eating the proper stuff and you start getting the microbiome in the gut working again, all of a sudden a lot of the reactions stop and you're starting to be able to break down your food and absorb the food and get the nutrients out of it. But it's the same thing as the soil. You have to stop poisoning it first. And as you stop poisoning the body starts healing and the gut microbiome starts coming back alive, and next thing you know, you're good again. But it's identical.
And that is kind of fun to think that we're using the
Yeah,
same thing to shortcut the human microbiome as I'm using
exactly.
to shortcut the soil microbiome. We're
Yes, yes.
using fish liver, right? Both of us.
Well, and it's so funny because when Alfonso started saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're talking about the same thing. You're talking about the microbiome of the plant growing and be healthy. And Alfonso is talking about the gut microbiome of us being healthy. Like, God is amazing. Look how he made both of these to work. Like, if that's out of whack, we're out of whack. If that's not growing, sufficiently and efficiently, we're out of whack.
And that leads us into the Azure Well line because the biggest problem we have out there in natural health now is there's so many supplements
Oh yeah.
on the market that's marketing only. And the majority of these supplement brands are using synthetic nutrients.
Yeah.
And even when, we might not say it's a synthetic mineral, but a lot of times the minerals that are being used are not the right type of minerals. They're not organically bound minerals and minerals that we get from plants and animals because the microbiome turns the minerals into a form that our body can use. So instead, these companies, to make things cheap, they're just throwing metals and rocks in your nutrients and they're calling them minerals. And it's like, but that hasn't gone through the process that it naturally is supposed to in plants and animals. So then this is where Azure comes along. And I don't know how much you want to talk about that, David, but basically they came to me and said, we want to work on this line. Would you like to help us? And I was like, absolutely. I would love to see a line of supplements that doesn't have any junk in it, that's actually real food.
Yeah.
And not all the additives and preservatives and junk.
Yeah, and that's something that's, you know, um, that I've been seeing so many results from. I guess I was a little bit slow to the start line on the supplements. I was kind of a diehard food is your medicine guy. And when I began to see, and Susan was very instrumental in helping me see this, but I began to see that, yeah, maybe in an ideal and perfect world, food is your medicine. Unfortunately, we do not have a perfect and ideal world. And furthermore, we have in this country hundreds of millions of Americans that are already sick to some level. We just talked a little while ago about the statistic of 55% of children with some kind of chronic disease. You are not, we are not going to be able, without some kind of supplementation, it is going to be extremely hard to get them from chronic disease to health for that exact reason, because the microbiome in the body is, as Dr. Monzo said, messed up, but it's incomplete. It does not have all the right strains of bacteria in the right balance to be able to digest our food optimally because we've messed it up with things like antibiotics and
Yeah.
drugs and all kinds of things. So supplements is the go-to, but I had seen that most supplements weren't working. People
Mhm.
were taking supplements
Okay.
and they were getting no results.
Yeah.
And why are we getting no results? And then I realized I looked at I looked at some of the supplements on the shelf, and oh, we're doing calcium here. It was calcium carbonate. Okay. You know what calcium carbonate is? It's limestone. Is our bodies really made to eat limestone? We don't have the microbiome in our digestive system to break down calcium carbonate. That digestive system is in the soil, and it has to be with other nutrients in the right balance, like sulfur, for instance, for the soil microbiome to even break it down. And then if the soil microbiome can break that down, it can, um, it can be utilized by a plant, which then can be utilized by us or by an animal and then utilized by us. But if we're gonna have calcium, we have to make sure that it was pre-digested by a plant initially, and maybe secondarily by an animal to be able for us to utilize it. Calcium carbonate, not even a plant can use that until the soil microbiome breaks that down. It's just known as limestone. It's exactly the same thing. And then I saw some iron that was iron oxide.
Yeah.
That, guys, that's just rust.
That's rust.
You may as well lick a rusty nail. You're going to get the same benefit.
Oh my gosh.
And you're
And
actually
people
going
are
to
being
get a
sold
D
this. Yeah.
benefit. This is actually, that rust is actually going to get into your cells unutilizable, and your body is going to be slightly, it's going to
Yeah.
act as a slight poison to your
Yeah.
body. It's going to, and mess up your microbiome even more. So go ahead.
And people are being sold all these things. They're thinking they should take
Every day.
something. They don't know the right
Well,
ones to take. And they're being sold all this stuff. And then they're taking it. Like you said, it's not working, but how much more is it destroying their
and
system?
and FDA regulates the heck out of supplements,
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
but they do not give a rip about this issue. All they're doing is you send it to a lab, and if it shows up iron, then you can put that on the label, or it shows up calcium, you can put that on the label. There is nothing in the regulations that says that it has to be in any wise utilizable. If it shows up in a lab test, it's good to go. Nor does it even break down what kind of protein it is unless that's specifically on the label. You can say protein powder, and it can be one amino acid. It's sad how, and yet they're so worried that there might be one microbe in that supplement. Oh, there might be some kind of microbe. There, might our bodies our bodies know how to handle microbes, even ones that are considered to be harmful microbes. Our bodies and immune systems can handle that. They can't handle rust. They really can't. Not at that level. So anyway, I think, after I'm seeing the difference and the difference that these supplements are making in people's lives now, Azure's really become, um, we've become dedicated to working with it, and we really appreciate the work that Dr. Monzo's done in helping us test these raw ingredients before we put them in supplements, because if you have bad ingredients, you're never going to get good supplements.
Yeah.
And so he's helped us with the testing of these ingredients, and it's made an absolute enormous difference, because we're seeing people, the supplement is actually changing um, their health. Their, the cod liver oil. When we found out about cod liver oil early on, I found out that the vast majority of cod liver oil on the marketplace, and I didn't know this before I got into this space, but the vast majority of cod liver oil on the market is completely refined, and they add synthetic vitamin A and D back into the cod liver oil after they have refined the retinols and the other naturally occurring stuff out through a heat and steam process. They take it out. It basically becomes just like a refined crude oil of some sort, but it's still a fish oil, so they're not lying about that part. And then they're adding synthetic nutrients back in so that it makes so they can put it on the label higher than what the naturally occurring one would. Oh, it's got X number of milligrams of vitamin D, whereas the naturally occurring one that's in actual cod livers might actually be a little bit less in milligrams on the label, but our bodies can actually use it. So don't get confused by the amount of milligrams on the label. That's not the most important part. We're required to put that on there by the FDA by law, but that's not the important part. It's the how utilizable is this for our bodies? And
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I think we're happy to say that Azure probably has, I think, the cleanest cod liver oil on the market by far. And there's like one or two other companies that are pretty close behind us, but
yeah, there's other people that get it from, this basic same source,
source.
but there's very few. If you look at the vast majority of cod liver, it's a very small minority
Mhm.
that even are selling real cod liver oil that has not been refined and kind of like you do. I mean,
Mhm.
like we were talking about the flour a little while ago. The flour has gotten so bad that they have to put riboflavin and other weird synthetics in the flour to try to have some kind of nutrients in the flour.
Yeah.
Uh, and if we just used good flour to begin with, it would have all that in it naturally, naturally occurring. But nope, you refine it all out, take the bran out, take the fiber out, take everything out, bleach it so that the last vestige of nutrients is gone, and then add in a few synthetics so the label looks good. Yeah. And that the synthetics are worthless to our bodies. The naturally occurring ones are the ones that our bodies can actually use.
Yeah, and I think this is
And you,
where a lot of the confusion comes in, where the powers that be are a lot of times behind a lot of these synthetic supplement companies
yeah,
because they want to sow in confusion and they want you
right,
to buy the stuff that doesn't work, and then they sit there and go, "Oh, well, we told you those supplements don't work." And it's like, "Well, yeah, because it's not real." So they
right,
sold you something that was corrupt that they know isn't going to work, and then they come out and say, "Oh, yeah, see, that stuff doesn't work and it's poison." And it's like,
right.
well,
Yeah, look at some of the companies that now produce supplements.
Yes.
Nestle and General Mills.
And
You
you
know,
have no idea where it's coming from. And that's the biggest thing is people just don't know. They're being told by figureheads or whoever that they should be buying these certain types of supplements or they do this. People really don't know. And that's what's so good about your heart and what you do with Azure Standard and Azure Well, because you actually care. You care about the ground, you care about nutrition, you care about the sustainable part, you care about health, you care about the ground, and you care about what people are eating. And the closer we can get to God's nature the way it should be and growing it healthier would make everybody healthier. So I mean, just everything you're doing, I appreciate because it's like you really care. You're not out for, like all of these other companies that are making fake stuff and trying to make money. You actually care about people and their health. And it shows with what you do and what you work on and your knowledge of the sustainability and the environment and the growth. It's just, thank you for what you've done for people because this is huge. I mean, the more we get the word out about Azure Standard, what you're doing with Azure Well, I'm excited that we get to partner with you with Freedom Healthcare and the practitioner program through Azure Well and all the things that are coming with Azure Standard. But getting the truth out to people is huge in the midst of the lies and the deception and the food that has no nutritional value and the supplements that are probably worse for you. Just knowing what Alfonso has
hmm.
helped with and what you're doing with finding those clean ingredients. And people have to realize if they want to go somewhere that's going to have the best food for them or the best supplements, this is a big deal, especially with where we are now in the
And
world.
I'd like to mention, we talked about food and supplements. There is another big area, and that's our household products. And so we've been delving into that more
Mhm.
deeply lately. A lot of the household products are absolutely laden with chemicals, and those aren't even regulated.
Yeah.
They can put anything in there because they're for external use, whether it's lotions and makeups and shampoos, or if it's cleaners or soaps. These things are all, and we get those in through our skin and through,
Mhm.
some of the
Mhm.
soaps. If we're washing dishes with them or whatever, there's residue on those things. So that's another space that we've been trying to work in. We were just recently, I'm pretty proud of the idea that we were able to create the first fully certified organic Castile soap.
Yeah.
Castile soap's the cleanest and best anyway, just because it's a really, it's made out of naturally occurring oils and such. But we've made one that's out of completely 100% organic product, and we were actually able to even certify it organic. So I was pretty excited about that. There's some other ones on the market that have some organic ingredients in them. They're made with some organic ingredients, but we were able to take it all the way, and I believe we're first to market on that. So
That
that
is
was really
that's
exciting.
so cool. And you think, I mean, our skin's the biggest organ we have.
Yes. Mhm.
So it's like, what are we putting on it? What's in the deodorant? What's in the creams? Like you said, what makeup are we putting on our face? And so not only are we getting internal poisoning, we're getting external poisoning, and educating people to find their way back as far as possible back to the way God created us, and the way to keep us healthy is huge.
Yeah. So yeah, the more that we can be careful with those kinds of things. And so Azure's been really, yeah, working a lot in that space in the last couple years, because it's another one that there's mass confusion about. But yet it's actually almost more common if there's acute poisoning, that it's happening from cleaners and stuff than it is from food. Now, I think food is actually causing a lot more of the issues long term, but acute has been, it's a big deal. So I just thought I'd bring that up real quick before.
I know, I love it. It's like you just keep moving forward. You have all of, these years and years and decades of information, and it just keeps getting better, and the knowledge base is there. I'm excited that we get to be there with you. Um,
Thank
I
you for
know,
being
gosh,
here
my
with us.
goodness, we're having way too much fun talking. Alfonso, do you have any, I don't know, any last questions? And then we'll let David, what can you think of?
Not really. I think we kind of covered everything.
I know this is awesome. We could go on for like another 3 hours. David, any other things that we may have just kind of just generally missed in these three areas that you want to leave everybody with?
Well, I will just say, I will just reiterate Azure's number one core value is to inspire healthy and abundant living. And I think that's kind of what we're all trying to do here today, is inspire healthy and abundant living. And
Mhm.
really, I feel like that that is one of the roots to a lot of the problems we have in our country and in our nation. Is, it gets back to the root. We're not thinking straight. We're getting, um, we feel like that other people have to take care of us.
Mm.
There's all these underlying causes that come back to the lack of healthy and abundant living. If we have an abundant life mindset, we're never going to worry about somebody else having too much, because they're me having more does not make somebody else have less, or somebody else having more does not make me have less. whether that's health or financial or in any other way. It's not the way life works. God is an abundant God. He
Yeah.
made enough for all of us and more than enough. It's an abundant world. And if we can have that healthy and abundant mindset, it will change the way we think in every way. And that is what will make the culture of the whole country move in a more sane direction.
So a lot of it is around renewing our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And our mind, a lot of it comes from our brain, and a healthy brain helps us think better, make better decisions, and nourishes our faith as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, we definitely went over a little bit, but thank you so much, David, for being with us today. I know we'll have you back on again and get into a whole nother realm of direction of information.
Absolutely.
But thank you for, everything that you're doing for people, everything that you're doing through AZure Standard and AZure Well, and just all the things that are happening, and really to focus on that abundant living and helping people be healthier.
And thank you
So
for helping to get this information out and to help folks. I know that some of the stuff Dr. Monzo has done has been amazing as well as to um, sometime I want to tell you about your patient in Alaska. That was an amazing conversation. But
very,
you've been a super blessing to that family.
he is a blessing. He is helping lots of people heal on different levels. Well, thank you. Thank you for
All
being with
right.
us. Thank you for everybody being with us tonight. I hope you
All
enjoyed this
right.
time with David and us. And we want to thank you for being here for the October 2025 Godcast. Have a great night, everybody.